Welcome to Coffee and Tantrums, your weekly podcast where we discuss effective strategies for managing behavior challenges in schools and at home. I am your host, Kevin Cranston. With 10 years of teaching experience, including 2 years running a behavior unit and a master's degree in school counseling. Thank you for joining me on our very first episode. Today we'll be diving into a topic that many teachers and parents face: what to do if your child or student is involved in a fight at school. School fights can be stressful and worrisome, but with the right approach, we can help our children learn and grow from these experiences. I'll be sharing some practical advice and strategies to handle these situations effectively. First, we'll start from the teacher's perspective. So if a fight was to happen in your classroom, what should you do? Well, first of all, you have to really understand that children are still learning to navigate their emotional and social interactions. Fights can stem from misunderstandings, peer pressure, bullying, or even issues outside of school. As teachers or parents, it's our goal to understand the behavior without stigmatizing the child. We need to create an environment where they feel safe to talk about what happened. So let's say that the fight just occurred in your classroom. What should you do? The first thing is to really make sure that all students are safe. As a teacher, I'd always make sure to send any kids to the nurse right away, and file any paperwork necessary. After that, I would go ahead and gather the facts. I talk to witnesses, teachers involved, and students to try to figure out what actually led to the fight. And the key in this is to really remain neutral and avoid making assumptions. I know a lot of times when fights first started, you would start thinking that like one thing started it, and then as you learn more information about the fight, you realize it was actually caused by something completely different. Another thing that's really important after a fight is in the classroom is to really just remain calm and approach the situation with a calm demeanor. Your reaction can influence how students perceive and react to the incident, so it's really important for you to remain calm. Once you've gathered all the information about the fight, you need to go ahead and address the immediate concerns, and it's time to deal with the actual behavior itself. So first, you want to go ahead and speak with the students involved separately. This helps gather their side of the story, and you understand their feelings and their motivations. A lot of teachers really focus on consequences and punishing the students, but I tend to kind of find that as just a part of the solution and not really even the most important part. I mean, we could give a kid ISS, we could take away their recess, but in the end, we're not really addressing the root cause of the fight, and we're not addressing the underlying problems that the students are exhibiting. Because remember, all behavior is a form of communication, and the student fighting with another student is trying to tell that student and the world something about them. So to me, the most important thing is doing some form of what is called restorative practices. It's also known as restorative justice techniques. This involves actually bringing the students together to discuss an impact that their actions had and try to repair that relationship. So how I like to do it is, if two students had a fight, first I would make sure, I actually give it time to kind of calm down, because when they're heightened, you're not really going to get to any positive solutions. So I'd wait for the students to calm down. Then I would go ahead and talk to them individually and just see if they're willing to talk with each other. Most of the time, the students are. It seems like students can repair relationships a lot easier than adults. So a lot of times, students really do want to work out these problems, but sometimes they don't. And if a student says no, they don't want to work it out, then you need to give them more time, because doing restorative justice or restorative practice when the students are not ready is not going to solve any problems. And it's just going to force a student into an awkward situation. So what I do is I wait for students to be ready, and then when they're ready to actually discuss it, I tend to bring them together, and I like to just start off usually with just something positive. So what I'll do is I'd say something positive about both students. Like I'll say, if one's Johnny, the other one's Alex, I might say like, Johnny, you're really good at, making people laugh. And then for Alex, I might say, and then Alex, you're really good at leading a group. And then I'd ask them to sort of go ahead and say something positive about each other. Usually that works. And then from there, we would go into just, so hey, like, you guys fought. So can you tell me more about why we fought? And then they would sort of begin to open up a little bit. And the key there is just remain neutral and non-judgmental. Even if I know Alex is lying, I'm not going to call him out. Because first of all, like, that might be his truth. He might really feel that way. It might not be true, but he might perceive that as what really happened. Or, because this is really just a time to, like, let those emotions out and let both students feel heard in a safe environment. And a lot of times, students really do want to work these situations out. It's just they don't know how. Like, we're taught how to do math, we're taught how to read, but we're really not taught how to solve behavioral conflicts. When we have a conflict with another, how do we solve those? And that's really our job as a teacher, is to teach them how to. So I start with something positive, then we go into what caused the fight. I like to look for any inconsistencies and just point them out, but in a real positive, loving way. So Alex might say that, well, Johnny, I didn't like it when you laughed at me. But as a teacher, I would have noticed that, like, hey, like, everyone was laughing at that moment. Like, maybe Alex made a joke and Johnny was laughing, but the whole class was laughing. Well, I would point out to Alex that, yes, Johnny was laughing, but remember, we all were laughing, and we were laughing with you, not at you. It seemed like you wanted to make people laugh. So I would really point out those inconsistencies, and really kind of find those incongruences and make them see the truth. And together, like, I'd have the students find a solution. So a lot of times if you ask them, like, so, like, what do you guys want to do? And then one of them might say, well, when I'm mad, can you give me my space? Because I need space. And then the other one probably would agree to that. So the key is to really let the students find their own solution. Because if I force a solution on them, if I tell them, oh, well, I'm just going to punish both of you, that's not going to do any good. Like, they have to really find the solution. But what I will do is, for consequences, I would like to have the kids actually come up with the consequence. So I'd be like, okay, if you fight again, like, what should happen? Because we've already made this agreement. We already said, you're going to give them space. But if you fight again, like, what should take place? What should we do? And a lot of times they'll say, like, oh, we'll take my recess or call my mom. And that's when I'm really going to hold them accountable. So if the fight was to happen again, then I would have to do that consequence. And it's more powerful because they're the ones that made it. And also for parents, after a fight, they get really scared. They don't want their kid to have a fight again. So you could actually tell them, hey, this is a solution they came up with. We did a restorative practice together. So that way everybody's sort of in the loop. And even letting admin know is super useful. so that admin knows what to do, because admin doesn't always know what consequences to give. I mean, they're still human. Like they're not 100% sure always what to do. And then telling them, hey, well, we agreed on having the mom called or the dad called, that can help them deciding what to do. And it might be a buffer too from them getting automatic like OSS. Like, hey, we have a plan of action. Let's do this first. Then if it happens, then we can do out of school suspension, because the goal is really to keep the kids in school. So from a teacher's perspective of a fight, that's what I would do. And after that, I'd actually go ahead and do a class lesson over conflict resolution. I actually teach it to my class. Go over strong emotions and that it's okay to have these strong emotions, but what can we do when experiencing them? There's also something called social skill stories. So you can just look them up, and you can pretty much just read the social skill story if you're not really comfortable on how to lead the lesson. Is you could just read them a story and go from there. So as a teacher, that's really what I would do. In terms of being a parent, so if my kid got into a fight at school, it's definitely difficult, because as a teacher, yes, you have a connection to them, but as a parent, I mean, you have an even bigger connection, that huge emotional connection. So the first thing I would do is make sure I'm calm, I'm non-judgmental. And then I would really first make sure my child's okay and my child's calm. I'd really want to confirm, did they take him to the nurse? Because it's super important that he got checked out or she got checked out. So first, I'd make sure they're physically okay. I would probably just give them some food, let them eat, give them some time just to calm down. As a teacher, we have a calm down corner where kids, it's not a punishment. It's just a place where they go to just regulate and calm down. So I'd probably just tell them, you're safe right now. Everything's going to be okay. And then we're going to talk in about 5 minutes. So I give them about 5 minutes just to decompress. And then I would go ahead and talk to them about the situation. The key is to really figure out why. Why did the fight happen? A lot of times the fight isn't really even about the fight. They might not have even been mad at the student. They could have been having a really bad day, and that other student was just what triggered them. So really finding out why. And then again, I would definitely do some consequence as a parent. I really like the consequence to sort of match the level of severity. So if they said a bad word in class, I don't think the consequence would be this severe. Because there was a fight where there actually was physical harm inflicted on another student, I would really do a bigger consequence compared to something more minor. So, and I would also determine why, as in maybe it could be self-defense. Even if it is self-defense though, I still feel like there should be some consequence, just because the child needs to understand that there were other ways to address the situation. And then I would like to kind of build into the consequence, a way to find the solution. So I think what I would probably do is sit the child down and go ahead and just read that social skills story with them, find one over fighting, and kind of just go over why we shouldn't fight, go over ways to ways to kind of control strong emotions if it was because they were experiencing strong emotions, and really kind of address with them the underlying problem. Was it they were experiencing anxiety? Are they experiencing depression? Were they being bullied by the student? Is it bullying? And then I would do a consequence based on that. I mean, it could be, they don't get to go on a camping trip that you had for them, or they don't get to do some events. It's really parent discretion. But yeah, I would definitely find a consequence after finding the why. And then after finding the why, there are things that you should follow up and do with the school because that why is super important. If the student feels like they're being bullied, then the school really has to do a bully report and a bully investigation. So if you feel like your student's being bullied, I would 100% use the word bullying and let administration know that, hey, my child's being bullied. If from there, I would also talk to the teacher, and I would ask the teacher, like, did we do a restorative practice, or what restorative practices are we going to do? Because again, like, punishing both kids is not really going to solve anything. We really have to find the underlying reason why and have them work it out. So I really push the teacher to do some form of a restorative practice, because I know a lot of parents, when it happened to me, would be like, what are you going to do for the other kid? How are you going to punish the other kid? But I mean, a lot of times I can't tell the parents, and also, like, that kind of shows me that the parent's just out for punishing, not for really finding solutions. So I would really, for the teacher, push for restorative practices. And then for your child in particular, I would, just make sure they feel safe. And then, honestly, after school for the next probably week or two, I would give them more time to talk with you. When they come home, like, I'd ask them how their day is and just give them time to be understood. If they need therapy too, therapy is always a great option as well. So that's really what I would do as a parent and as a teacher. After I go over like the topic, I was gonna go and answer maybe 1 to 3 questions. Feel free to always write these questions to me. You can email me at coffeeandtantrums.com or just leave a comment anywhere. For the first couple sessions, though, I'm just going to use ChatGPT because I really don't have an audience yet. So these are ChatGPT questions, but in the future, feel free to send me any question and I can answer them. So the first question was, as a teacher, I often find myself in the middle of student conflicts. What are some strategies I can do to de-escalate fights before they become physical? So the best thing you can do is have a relationship with your students. Have it where your students trust you and feel open with you. Because that way they can come to you before it escalates, before it even starts. And really just listen to your students. If they're saying somebody is messing with them, someone's being mean to them, it could mean nothing. But it always has like some purpose. They might have a crush on that student. They might want to be friends with that student but not know how. That student might really be being mean to them. And so having that relationship allows that student to trust you and open up to you. And then you actually taking them seriously will de-escalate most of these situations before they occur. As a teacher, another thing I like to do is just have it where students can go and write notes to me throughout the day. They can get up for any reason, write a note, leave it in my box. A lot of times students, some of them are shy. They don't want to talk. So letting them write it down or even drawing me a picture of something, because some of them don't like to write, and just putting it in will sort of give them that lifeline to talk to me before it even gets to a fight. Now let's say that all that failed and 2 students are just fighting, right? Well, you got to think about the situation. Are they fighting alone, or are they arguing or yelling like in front of their peers? So if they're like screaming at each other, they're not fighting yet, but they're just screaming. It could also just be a show. I mean, they're in front of their friends. They don't want to like embarrass themselves. They don't want to back down. So what I will do is, if they're starting to argue, I will just separate them and try to get one of them like outside if there's arguing and yelling, and talk to them one on one where their classmates can't hear them, and really just like tell them, hey, like I understand you're frustrated, but like yelling isn't gonna help. Like, like what are some other things we can do? Or like, hey, like let me talk to him and like let me see what I can do. Because again, yelling is not gonna help, but if I can talk to him, let me see. And that's also why it's important to kind of have real sort of not like real consequences that you follow through with in your classroom. I don't have super severe consequences. I might take away 5 minutes of recess, that's it. But I still want to follow through with that. And I sort of know what is a real consequence for each kid. So for 5 minutes of recess, that's going to destroy the hearts of most of my kids. But there's some who I know if I called a parent, that will be the consequence they need. I'd really know that consequence, and then I'd follow through with it if necessary. But that's really it. Just build a relationship with your kids, listen to them, take them seriously, and have some consequence, and definitely follow through when necessary. And for the second question, it comes from a parent's perspective. What steps can I take if I feel the school is not handling my child's involvement in a fight fairly? So what if I feel like, hey, the school's like not listening to my kid? My kid was just defending himself, and they're just like, there's something against my kid. And that is a real situation that could happen. So the first thing I would do is I would document all interactions and all instances related to the fight. I'd include dates, times, and the people involved. So definitely like documenting everything is key. Not just like calling and talking over even if I called and like talked over the phone, I would document that. I called a date, I'd write who I contacted, what was said. And just document everything you can. You can definitely request a meeting with the school administrators and the teachers. A lot of times, like, these teachers have like 50 kids. They are busy. And it might feel like they're not taking it seriously, but like they really are. Or just like they just might not have, like the consequence might have been an admin consequence. Or the teacher might just be waiting to collect more data to put a student in a better placement. So most of the time they are taking it seriously. It might just be a communication problem, which is why requesting a meeting with school administration to discuss the concerns is really a great sort of way to open up that communication and really see what happened. If you've done that and you feel like, hey, it's still not working, you can familiarize yourself with the school's policies on fighting and just make sure everything's really being followed through. There's always a student code of conduct, and just make sure that like all the code of conduct from your side is being followed through. I'd also really focus on the restorative practices and make sure that the school's really doing those. Because to me, again, that's really the key to solving most of these. If necessary, this would be the final step. And this is sort of the nuclear option. So I would really try everything first. But you could always go to the school district. Or you could go to what is called an education advocate or attorney. I've worked with in the special education program, and there are special education advocates who really make sure that your child's needs are met. A lot of teachers personally do not like advocates, just because they really can be aggressive and they really do want the data. I personally love education advocates. In meetings, they would always go after everybody, except me, because I always had the data to back up everything. So just remember, you always have an education advocate who can back you up. But I would really keep that for a last resort, just because, once you go there, the schools are going to be very careful with how they communicate with you, and they might close it off just to protect the school. But that is definitely an option. So those are a couple questions. This was the first podcast. And that's going to be it for today's episode of Coffee and Tantrums. I hope you found our discussion on handling school fights helpful. Remember, the key is to approach each situation with empathy and use that restorative techniques to focus on growth. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with other teachers and parents who might find it useful. Thank you for joining me, and until next time, keep your coffee strong and your tantrums short.